So what I'm going to talk about, you're not going to, and I'm using air quotes, you're not going to learn anything. What I am going to do, if you'll let me, is I'm going to spend some time trying to validate some of the things that you've heard from your employees. So as I worked for over 25 years with the Phoenix Police Department, and to this day, I am madly in love with the department and the people there. It was such an amazing place to work. I miss it every day. But what happened towards the end of my career was we got a chance to work with all the people either who were thinking about leaving or had chosen to leave, and then sat down and compiled their answers. And I am not a big fan of exit interviews per se, because I think that if you wait until people have decided to leave, you're kind of missing the boat. So we compiled both exit interviews for those who did want to leave, and then the folks who had also chosen to stay, and we call those stay or status interviews. And I would submit to any agency, and if anyone ever wants this presentation, it's longer than I'm doing today. But my hope is that what it does is for anyone who works within the wellness space, it validates everything you're doing, because a lot of things that cause people to stay or leave an agency, or even to join an agency, can be attributed to either communication, reputation, or more often than not, wellness, how they feel. And so if you please go to the next slide, sir. So thank you. So I'm only going to touch, because I don't like presentations when people just talk about themselves, but I just want to tell you why I'm in this space. So in the late 90s, I had always wanted to be a police officer. I was living in upstate New York, and I was not able to get hired there. There was so many applicants and so few openings, which, we're not seeing currently. That a buddy of mine came out, got hired by Phoenix, and said, "Hey, Phoenix is hiring over 300 people." And I thought that's impossible. Nobody hires 300 people. But sure enough, came out, got through the process, and I got to tell you that I think it was about $12 an hour was the starting wage, and I couldn't believe that they were actually paying me to go out and do this job. And I think some of my coworkers were surprised they were paying me too. But I remember the first time, as a lot of the swarm folks remember, driving out of the gate the first time without your FTO, and you thought, man, this city, this area, this beat that I'm assigned to is going to be the safest in the world. And I truly believed that I was out there to make a difference. I had given away everything that I own except a coffee pot, some clothes, and my geo tracker, because when I filled the U-Haul up with gas, I didn't realize how expensive the trip from New York to Phoenix was going to be. So gave away everything I owned, brought the bare minimum, as I mentioned, $12 an hour, or however much it was. My point is, I would have done it for free. And I know that sounds silly nowadays, because we're all doing competitive pay and we're all trying to work towards the same applicants. But it was because I believed and I wanted to go out and help people. And I really, truly thought that I could make a difference. And I think a lot of the people that we're hiring still believe they're going to make a difference. And obviously they're paid a lot more, but that's not their why. So what I tell people is, when you start focusing on pay and benefits and all the things, that's cool, because we're all competing for the same applicants. But when you really tap into the why, that's when you get them to want to stay and flourish where they are, even if your agency pays a lot less than certain agencies. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I started to ask the question, why do some people pick a particular agency? Because if it's just based on money, there's one or two agencies who should have 100% of the applicants. And I'll use our current agency. And Surprise, when I retired from Phoenix, Surprise had asked me to come out and create a wellness unit like I was able to create in Phoenix in 2004. And I started asking these questions to a lot of people. Why are we, who pays less than some other agencies, 100% fully staffed, or we were at the time? We've been added new bodies since. But why do we have a full staffing in other agencies with phenomenal benefits and phenomenal culture struggling at the time to get people in the door? And one of the things that if you really focus on the why, you'll find that wellness, and those of you who are living in the wellness space, might be underutilized by your agency, because you're usually asked to go talk to someone when they're having a bad day or a problem. And what I think a lot of people will, if you focus on, you guys actually have a lot of the answers of why people feel engaged or disenchanted from the agency. Next slide, please. And so we've all heard this probably several times in the last couple of years. We put people through this battery of tests, this litany of tests, so that these people on paper are the most well qualified, mentally ready, and physically fit. These are the folks who you would think would do 20, 25, 30, or even more years with our agencies, and we put them through this battery of tests. We get the quote, the right applicants, and then they leave. And we saw this a lot. Next slide, please. We saw this a lot around 2020. This is when it was really starting to come to fruition, and we were able to anticipate that not just our agency, but a lot of agencies we talked to throughout the country were facing similar upcoming staffing challenges. And I got to tell you, and it's my opinion, it was more than just forecasting when their drop periods would end. It was the culture that we were living in, their family's perception, and how wellness, if applied appropriately, could certainly have offset some of those factors. I think the one question that we all ask is, if we hire these, I'll call them kids, and I mean new to our career, we hire people who signed up for literally the same reasons that we did. They want to help people, they want to serve, they want to protect, they want to stand between good and evil. We hire these folks with the right motives. And then after a certain period of time, we all kind of think, okay, how did they become this person? And yet it happens to almost everyone. Almost 100% of our population experiences these change. And it's been talked about in the conference already. Next slide, please. People like Gil Martin and others have done an amazing job saying, hey, this is how that transition occurs. I couldn't hold a candle to them. But I will tell you that there are some impacts to the current staff who has not yet gone through this transitions. And we as wellness, and we as people who consider ourselves leaders, can minimize the impact. And I think that for all the times that I hear about different generations and people signed up for different reasons, and 100% that is true. Different generations communicate differently. But the one common thread they seem to have is that they want to help people. And the other common thread is they need someone who's been there to say to them, hey, you can actually make this a very lucrative career, a very profitable career, and a very rewarding career. But we want your family, your friends, and everyone in your circle to be intact at the end of this career, so that you don't have to deal with some of the things that we've seen others go through. And the way that you do that, and this is what, as I mentioned, we'll go do this for any agency. We really have taken these answers because leaders have said to us, I understand we got to treat people well, and I understand the why, but how does that look in the day to day? Now, I gave away almost everything I owned for the why, but you know what? And next slide, please. The why for me is literally the same as the why for everyone who's in your academy. I don't know of any, maybe a couple. People don't stand up and say, I'm here for the money, the pay, the benefits. I'm here because I want a take-home car. Those are great factors, but they all want to help people. And yet, if you really look at how we continue to recruit in this field, we're still focused on money and benefits and cars. The bigger the agencies have these signing bonuses, they have transfer opportunities and all these things that should matter. And yet smaller agencies like ours are continuing to hire to have people coming out in droves for the test. So if all those things matter, and that's how we do our recruiting, on how much you can make and how quick you can get to SWAT, if that really matters, then why are the smaller agencies successfully not only hiring, but keeping people? Next slide, please. And that's where I think your recruiters can help make or break you. And so what we did is we have a very talented recruiter named Brisa. Brisa is part of our wellness team. And the reason that that is such a natural transition is from the moment someone walks in as an applicant, they're going to remember how they were treated. Now, if they get hired, we love that. And if they don't, they're still going to remember how they were treated. And their perception of our department is going to stick with them. And they're going to become an ambassador for us, much like your retirees are ambassadors for you if you give them a reason to be. But if you focus on the what or how much, you're missing an opportunity, in my opinion. When I see someone in Brisa's office, when I see somebody who's interested of learning more about our department, I got to tell you that 2 or 3 minutes of talking to them about their why and telling them that you would like them to join your team and really making them feel like they're valued, because they are, can make or break what they're doing with other agencies. Because we all have people who are talking to multiple agencies, and what is going to matter when they go home and talk to their loved ones about your agency is how you made them feel. Now, I got made fun of this one, and if you're willing, please, next slide, please. I said, hey, you know what? If you're going to focus on why people sign up for an agency, if you're the type of person who cares about others and you want to help people and you want to make the community safer, have we got a surprise for you? Ha, ha, ha. By the way, that was quickly shot down. However, The point was, I'm not looking to find out who's here for the most money. I'm not looking to find out who's here because of the certain weapon we carry. If you believe in what we believe in, and if you really truly believe that you can make this community a better place, there is a place for you on this team. Next slide, please. So again, I'm probably beating this point. If you ever get truly bored and you start looking at what agencies are proud of, it's these things. It's the money, it's the promotions, it's the transfer. However, in the last several waves of oral boards that we have hosted, next slide, please, when at the end, there's the opportunity, we call it the I love me speech. Tell us about yourself. Tell us why you applied for us, or do you have any questions for the board? And the question that always comes up now that did not come up when I was hired was, tell me about the resources you have to help me be mentally well throughout the career. So they get it, the applicants get it, but we don't. And the irony is the challenges that our employees face, and this is critical, both sworn and professional. It's not just the people who make paychecks. It's not just the body worn cam operators. It's not just records. It's everyone in your agency, crime scene techs, dispatchers, sworn person, everybody. Their frustrations with your agency, with my agency, are literally the same as anywhere else. Any Google search will tell you that the private sector struggles with the same things we do. So what we're going to talk about in a moment is, what is your internal messaging? If people say I'm frustrated with the communication, my question is, how much time are you spent talking about the why? And I can really simplify it for a lot of groups. Next slide, please. Your stay interviews are really just exit interviews in the present tense. So if an exit interview is there anything we could have done? Is there anything we could have done to encourage you to stay? The question you can ask anybody in the hallway, and I tell chiefs, please do this all the time. You see someone, say, hey, do you have a minute? What are we doing that's causing you to stay here? What are we doing that's causing you to, why did you apply here? What do you enjoy most about this place? Or here's the painful one, what would you change about our agency if you could? And two things happen when this happens. One, they believe that their leadership cares because they're taking the time, and it's not a lot of time, to ask the question. And two, ultimately what you will find is those folks will tell the chief, the assistant chief, whoever that is, how much they appreciate the wellness person. Because the wellness person is going to be there if they've had a bad day. Your peer support, your CISM, your full-time wellness, that name will usually come up to the chief. And now you get a little bit of free advertising for your program. So if we think about, if it's NYPD or LAPD or any of the local agencies, you can see any patrol car, next slide, please, and automatically an agency reputation comes to mind. But I got to tell you that on the wellness front, you have a big, big stake in that reputation. We talk about morale all the time. How do we measure morale? Well, we do these employee surveys. Are they anonymous? We think they are, but then people say, well, we find suspects with website address, with internet addresses. So is it anonymous? People have trust when it comes to that aspect of asking. Those hallway conversations, they can easily overcome it. One of the things that I'm a really, really, really big fan of is sometimes you have to go around your employees to tell their families how awesome they are. Because, and we know this, cops come home, dispatchers come home. How was your day? Good. Anything happen? Nope. So what I do, and it's in a later slide, but and a lot of people don't like this, by the way, but the employees that I've done this to, I've always gotten good feedback. And one, this kind of big, tough, grizzled officer in the department came up and he had tears in his eyes. He said, no one's ever done that. You want to reach their family? We have a family support team component here where we get families together, particularly after a stressful, horrible, critical incident. But then we also make efforts to call when we know the employees with the family. We apologize to the family, and then we say, can you put me on speaker for a second? And then we take 1 minute and we tell the family something very specific that their employee had done that was amazing and was well received and made a difference in someone's life, something that that employee never would have shared. And a lot of times, if you choose to do this, there will be a pause. Sometimes you'll hear the spouse, significant other say, hey, that really meant a lot to me. But the next time you see the employee, they're usually going to come up and say, hey, you know what? Thanks for doing that. And it has never failed yet. And it's one of those $0 fixes. I tell people that if you started doing this tomorrow, and it has to be genuine, next slide, please. If you started doing it tomorrow, it would have an immediate impact. So, a couple quick questions when we talk about wellness. Can wellness help recruit, retain, and improve the morale of employees? 100%. And how do I know? Because there was a time where over 90%, we were about 92%, and please hear me out on this, of our lateral police officers, so officers who left an agency and joined our agency, over 90% of them were referred to by our patrol officers. Now, anyone who's worked patrol realizes that patrol works all the holidays. It's harder to get time off. Like there is minimum staffing, sometimes mandated overtime. So, in theory, your patrol officers should have the most reason to be frustrated at times. And yet, and at least what we've enjoyed is over 90% of our laterals were because one of those officers took the time to meet another officer from an adjacent city or somewhere in their circle and said, "Hey, I think you'd like it. You should join our team." Now, I recognize that part of that might be, hey, the quicker we get our full staffing, the quicker I can get out of patrol and go to a specialty. That is a thing. But I don't think people inherently want to bring their friends into a flood situation. And when you have over 90% of your patrol lateral referrals, so we're doing something right. We're certainly not doing everything right. And the other thing, next slide, please. And I ask people all the time, we're also at about 90% that I've found, do you live in the city that you serve? And they say yes. Now, we've told police officers since the dawn of policing, don't live in the city that you serve. And yet ours do. And yet a lot of our applicants live in our city. And so I ask them, why? Why are you serving in the city that you live? Why are you applying for us if you live in the city? And of course, you can imagine the answer is always the same. I want to impact the place that I live. I want my kids' school to be better. I want my community to be safer. And I want to be here to watch my family grow in this city. Now, why do I bring that up? Next slide, please. Because you can't put a dollar amount on that one. We can talk about what matters, or the Tahoe or the rifle that we give them. We can talk about the cool new taser, but it's never come up. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of these interviews, and it's never once come up. So maybe it's not a biggest factor as agencies want to believe. Now, this story offends someone, and I apologize, but there's a point to it, I promise. It was about the year 2000. I mentioned in 97, drove out the gates for the first time. In 99, we lost an officer, Mark Atkinson. He was on the 83 Frank squad, and I was very fortunate to be able to serve that squad during that very difficult time, and recognize that there were some things as that we did well as an agency, and there were some things that we could do better. And so I was on the CISM team. I got a chance to continue to go out and serve, and then in 04 was able to co-create the employee assistance unit. And there was only two of us at the time. Learned a lot of lessons about how to take care of people, and learned a lot of lessons about mistakes that I made. I feel like I could fill a book with my mistakes, but we always err on the side of what's the right thing for the employee. So it was about the year 2000, just prior to starting the employee assistance unit, I had gotten transferred to our headquarters, the pinnacle of policing. I'm a 6,000 serial number, and I see a guy who's a 3,000 serial number. So there's about 3,000 people between his hire and my hire. He's been on a long time. He's walking into the restroom. He's got a newspaper folded up under his arm, and I made the mistake of saying, "How you doing?" And his response to me was, "How am I doing? I was in there for 20 minutes. I do it twice a day." And he had added up his words, 40 minutes per day. He worked 5/8, so he worked 5 days a week, 40 minutes a day, 2 shifts of 20 in the restroom, 40 minutes a day times 5 days a week over a 32-year career. In his words, and if you add it up of actual work years, it's over 2.6 actual work years of 2,080 hours per work year. And his words, and he said, that's over 2.5 years of time that this bastard of a city will never have. They'll never take from me. And when I tell people that story, they're like, "Well, he was a jerk." Well, yeah, he was, but what we found out later was he was mean to the people he worked with, and he was probably mean to the people he lived with. And what we did as an agency, and I'll take the blame on this one, that wasn't addressed. That guy continued to go on and still be a jerk. He continued to still go in and time how long he was in the restroom to hide from doing work and to treat coworkers horribly. That was someone who I hope he's living a wonderful life. I really do. But in that moment, we had the opportunity to at least hold him accountable. I don't know if he would have taken the resources of wellness, but I'll never know because I didn't ask. But what we didn't do is we didn't hold him accountable to how he treated his coworkers. And the ripple effect is when you don't treat people with that wellness arm, is that they then go on and they go home and they treat their friends and their family in such a way. There might be kids who grew up with a jerk of a dad because someone didn't intervene that day and I didn't intervene that day. And that's one of the things that I wish that I could go back and do over. Next slide, please. But it really stuck. It really stuck with me. Now, when you ask people, how are you? Good is always the answer. But when you ask people why they're making career decisions, they're usually going to say something like the first guy said, well, I'm leaving this department because it's closer to home. And that was, it was shortly after the civil disturbances that we had downtown, the protests. And there was an officer leaving. And I said, why are you leaving? Because he wasn't leaving law enforcement. He was leaving our agency. He was going to another agency. So he still wanted to be a cop. He just didn't want to be with us. And I said, why are you leaving? And he said, I want to be closer to home. Why are you leaving? He goes, I don't know. I just don't really love this place anymore. And I said, why are you leaving? He goes, you know why I'm leaving? He goes, because, and he articulated for how many days he had been out there on protest lines and getting yelled at by people he didn't know. And he was very frustrated because he felt that the department or nobody in his chain or nobody in the city, anybody in his world, nobody took the time to say, hey, I know that's not you. And I know you care about people. He goes, and nobody told the world, when the world told me I was horrible, nobody told me I wasn't. That was an opportunity that we missed. How would we have found that? Because we didn't do, he there were some wellness check-ins that as his friends, we could have done a better job on. Now, he's still in law enforcement and he's still happy, but that was an opportunity to keep a good person that we did miss. And the other one, under the heading of wellness, how wellness can help retain folks, there was an officer or detective one day, and he walked by my office and I small talk, and he had tears in his eyes. And I said, tell me, what's going on? He goes, I'm leaving. Where are you going? He goes, I'm just retiring. He goes, I was involved in the protests. My wife was at home. She saw me getting my stuff ready every day. That wasn't my normal assignment. She saw the protests on TV. He goes, to save my marriage, I have to go. She doesn't want me to do this anymore. Now, I was able actually to follow up with him. He went on to another quasi law enforcement agency, and he is happier there then. But the question was asked, is there something we could have done to better have helped your spouse through this time? And he said there absolutely was. And he shared some things. My point, so it's not just storytelling, I promise. My point is, if you ask, they will tell you, but you have to ask from the right perspective. You have to ask out of genuine care and concern. And if you're going to be stuck texting, if you're going to be looking at your watch, that is not the time to ask, because they will absolutely let you know what's causing them to make heartfelt decisions, but you have to be ready to hear it. And not to defend the agency or whatever agency you're with, and not to make excuses or not even to try and fix it, but they have to be heard. And if you please go to the next slide. I know this to be true because I spent a lot of time calling other states, and they were having very similar challenges too. And I recognize the pendulum is swinging the other way, but there are a lot of agencies who are still behind the recruitment and the retention goal that they had reached for themselves, and they're trying to make for lost time. And they're going to make it up. It's just going to take a little bit of time. And again, a lot of agencies that New York, California, and Texas were the ones who were really, really verbose. Just if you'll let me, a couple things that it's working for us. It's not your agency's culture, and maybe it wouldn't work where you are. When everyone graduates the academy, we all go celebrate them in a very large auditorium, and they do the swearing in, and that is amazing. But then what we do is on a day shortly thereafter, we have a more intimate swearing in where they get to bring their families. And then we have the entire department join us in the briefing room. And then they get sworn in again directly with the chief in front of their families. And then we do photos with everybody. At some point, we're probably going to start feeding them because we're continuing to grow. And then we want them to take their families around and show them, this is my patrol car. These are the holding cells. This is how, this is where I'll be sitting calling in reports. We want them to visualize that this is their job. Again, you could call it wellness, but it's both recruitment and retention because their families are going out and posting on social media and telling everyone else how well they were treated. Another one that we do, and again, it might work for you or it might not, is on the 4th of July, the police chief and the fire chief get together and they barbecue together for every employee's family. Then we block off the parking structure outside, and the families who want can all go together on top of the parking structure, see the fireworks together. But the visual representation of your leaders literally serving your families in an air conditioning building with the kids behind you playing cornhole while you sit there and you can introduce your family or loved ones to your commanders and your chiefs and your sergeant. That stuff really matters. Now, I tell people the class is called $0 fixes. Of course, there's a cost for the food. But I will tell you that the return on investment for people feeling appreciated and morale is huge and probably even very difficult to measure. Next time, please. All right. So people will argue, I am of the belief there's no such thing as a bad leader. Because if you treat people poorly, maybe you're not a leader. Maybe you're just someone who manages people. I don't know. But I believe if you're a leader, you're a good leader. If people are looking to you as a leader, you're probably pretty good. So we've seen some fails. We've seen some opportunities to do better. I was talking to a lieutenant one day, and he was kind of laughing. He goes, "Can you believe this?" He says, "I saw this officer typing in a report, and I heard the sergeant say, 'Hey, I noticed you took a sick day the other day. Be a little judicious in your sick leave time because when you retire, you're going to be able to cash that in.'" He says, and then the officer turned around and laughed and said, "I'm only doing this for 2 years. I'll be leaving in about 2 years." He goes, "Can you believe it? The new generation, they don't want to stick to a career. They don't want to commit to anything." And he was kind of laughing. And I said, "Wow, that was an absolute failure on your part." And he was surprised. And I said, "Did you think to say to the officer, 'Hey, give me 4 minutes of your time. Let me show you how your pension and your post-employment health care are going to be covered by this city and the state. Let me show you how if you invest wisely now, you can leave in 20, 25 years and never work again. Let me tell you how if you properly plan with great insurance, how your family is going to benefit. We're going to pay for your school.'" Did you tell him any of those things? No, no, I thought he was leaving in 2 years. Why bother? Because you didn't lead. That's why. And when we let people just simply say, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm only doing this a couple years," and we don't try to keep, look, the reality is, if we had tried to keep him and he still left, okay, we were out 4 minutes. Who cares? But we didn't try. Another one I saw was somebody who said, "Yeah, I'm going to some briefings and I'm going to show I'm going to show officers a video. I'm going to tell them you need to stop doing that." And I said, "That's what you're going to tell them? Yep, you got to stop doing that. This isn't going to fly in this climate." Cool. I go, you're still a cop. Why don't you point at yourself and say, "Hey, we need to stop doing this, and here's why." I keep talking about the why. Say, when this happens, the public sees it as this. We can't defend that anymore. And when you fail to do that, now you're making it harder for your coworkers and your families. Did you just take a moment to point to yourself and say, "We could do a better job"? Or did you at least look around the room and say, "Hey, does anyone have a different idea of how we could do that?" We complain all the time that, "Hey, the chief said I got to do this. The chief said I got to do that." Yeah, but the chief didn't tell you how you had to do it. They said, "This is the goal." And give them a way to figure it out. They're probably pretty bright and could have come up with a way. And this person, I was very happy. This person stopped approaching their briefing in that way, and that made me feel better. There were some wellness misses that we've had, and these are, by the way, not through any one agency. These are just a culmination of probably about the last 7 years of doing this. There was an officer who was in training who had a pretty bad thing happen to his kid. And originally, the response was, "We're going to bring him food and check in with the hospital." And that was a good thing. I applaud that. But what they didn't do is they didn't communicate it outside of the people who helped him. And so on Monday morning, this officer who was scheduled for annual officer training was sitting in the room with his child still in the hospital on zero sleep because they didn't communicate it. And by not communicating it, they robbed us the opportunity to have our leadership call and say, "Hey, I'm so sorry to hear about your kid. I got the wellness team on the way. They're going to take care of you. If you need anything, I've got you. But don't worry about the training right now. You're where you need to be. We'll be okay. We'll figure it out later." That was an opportunity both to lead and to serve that we had missed. And then the last one is how we treat people matters. There was someone of a lieutenant rank who was very frustrated with the sergeant. And this person was very frustrated that the sergeant questioned them openly and questioned them at all. And I said, well, let me clarify, because morale is a thing, and we keep hearing that sometimes people feel like, hey, if you tell me what to do, I'll do it. But if you tell me enough, I'm only going to do that. I'm not going to do more. Well, are we robbing people of the ability to go out and do creative, proactive, good police work? And so this guy said, well, listen, I'm all for that. He goes, but they're not going to talk to me like that. I go, okay. So when you say jump, you want to hear how high? He goes, absolutely. And if you point to a building and say, take the building, you want him to run towards the building. He goes, now you got it. I go, how often are those big scenes happening right now? He goes, well, they're not happening a whole lot. So did you have an opportunity as a leader to say, hey, this is my plan. What am I missing? How could I do it better? How could we do it better? Did you ask your sergeant that? No, I wouldn't ask the sergeant that. I said, if a bad thing is happening, I get it. But if a bad thing isn't, why not at least give them the dignity of saying, what am I missing? Show a little bit of humbleness. It might have worked, it might not have worked. And God forbid, and people get mad at me when I say this, maybe we can even say please and thank you at times. I get it when a bad thing's happening, not the time, but hey, I got this report. Could you tackle it, please? Thank you so much. That matters to people. Next slide, please. That matters a lot. Can I go to the next slide, please? Thank you so much. So how do you greet them? If your applicants are walking in, sitting in the lobby with the sun beating through the windows, waiting for someone to come out and then summon them by name, they are going to feel like a number. Your culture is contagious, but you are not harmed by making that culture about them. The one thing, and next slide, please, that people comment, even after they've been hired, is, hey, you know what? I was made to feel valued the first time I got there. If you're walking, particularly if you're in uniform or if you're in a rank and you see an applicant there asking questions, that's a scary thing for them. How are you harmed by reaching out, shaking their hand and saying, hey, I'm so glad you're looking at our agency. You're obviously with the best people to answer the questions. Just want to tell you that we're really glad you're here. Those 20 seconds will let them remember your culture. And if they have to choose between other agencies, they're going to remember that. So on the sake of time, because I get it that we're running probably about 10 minutes left or a little bit less, I'm going to fly through. Next slide, please. What we've chosen to do, and it certainly doesn't mean it's the right thing, is our wellness team is essentially an ambassador. So any family member we always say the employees in agencies, I'm saying any employee or family member, significant other, or whoever is important to that employee can call our number 623-222 FRST, First Responder Support Team. They will get an ambassador. That's a team member on standby. They can ask about dental care. They can ask about crisis resources. They can ask about wellness incentives. They can ask anything. When we shield your family and friends, your loved ones from this part of your life and don't give them the ability to learn more about what we do, we're missing an opportunity. And even though I don't want them to leave, next slide, please, we still help them with career development. We help them get to the specialty unit they want. We help them with LinkedIn. We help them develop resumes. We want them to prosper while they're here. And if they choose to leave, so be it. A couple quick stories. Again, I tell people you're not learning in this presentation. I get it. I'm just sharing stories to validate. If you believe in good leadership, servant leadership, and wellness, then I want to be able to validate everything you believe. So there is a guy, I mentioned I work for Phoenix. There's two guys, Chris Eric and Bob Fessmeyer. Chris Eric retired as a commander, and Bob Fessmeyer is still there serving. He's probably one of the most humble, kind-hearted servants I've ever met. And I ask people when I worked in Phoenix all the time, who are some of the best leaders you know? And Chris Eric's name would always come up. And who do you love in this agency? And Bob Fessmeyer's name would always come up. And I follow it up with, tell me the greatest piece of police work Chris Eric has ever done, or the greatest soul that Bob has ever saved. And they can't, because that's not what they're about. They're loved and respected, and people would walk through a fire for them because of how they're made to feel. You can't sit in front of either of these guys and have them pick up a phone and check a text or blow you off or kind of summarize. They will sit there all day to make you know you are the most valuable, important person in their life at that moment. And if we as leaders and as we as wellness folks can go ahead and learn a little bit about that, I promise you it works. When your text notification is going off and someone's pouring their heart out, or you look, and we've all done it, we've all bought the smartwatch, and then we look at it because a notification came in because we don't want to look at our phone. It sends a message. These two guys are the masters of saying, if you're sitting in front of me, you are the most important person ever. And agency leaders, I always encourage this one. And please, next slide. There was a raise once that had come out, and I asked people, well, how did you hear about it? And then can we go to the next slide, please? And they said, well, I heard about it from the union, or I heard about it from my buddy. And if you can message it internally, because you matter, we were able to negotiate a raise for you. We wish it could be more, but we understand that you have options, and we want to continue to provide as great a working environment as we can and to get you all the benefits. We're continuing to fight on your behalf. We just want to let you know you matter. That would have been better than how other people found out. Now, this isn't just police work or the fire service. I was presenting this class to a group of folks from the water department. And I said something stupid like, I know you're not going to serve them breakfast. And one of the guys raised his hand. He goes, actually, we invested in a Traeger, a smoker. He said, and quarterly, the leaders of the agency will come out, they'll buy the stuff, they'll put in the Traeger, we'll be in the parking lot, we'll sit out there all night, we'll talk, we'll laugh. And by the time the employees roll in the morning, the food is almost done. And I said, so your people can literally smell how much you care about them. And they go, yeah, I never thought of it. Yes, they can. No one told them to do this, but if we could talk to any of those employees right now, I promise you the impact on those folks, just because someone serves them food quarterly, is priceless. The return on investment, huge. This has never happened to me before. There was a detective I was talking to in this agency. Next slide, please. And he said, yeah, there's an officer who wanted to learn about what we do. He goes, but he couldn't get the time to shadow us for minimum staffing. So I interrupt him. I go, dude, you rode in the car with him to help him? He's like, no, I went and rode patrol for a week so that he could come and shadow. Now, I had never had a detective say, I'll go ride your beat for a week. You come and shadow so you can learn. But that's how strong the culture was of people wanting to help each other. And that one kind of stunned me. I'm not going to lie to you. And detectives doing something as simple as emailing patrol officers with case resolution. Hey, this is how it went out because of your initial efforts, because you did a great job. I just want to tell you that we got, 25 years on the suspect. That kind of stuff is free. It's easy and it matters to them. Next slide, please. If someone comes to you with a great idea, all I ask is that you follow up with them. And what we'll do, if we could please, Dara, can we please go to the slide that says Roman? Okay, thank you so much. So last one of two stories. So in December of 22, I had accepted this job to come to Surprise, and I really wasn't telling anyone. And then I finally started telling people because, at the end of the month, December 23rd, I was retiring. And I started getting calls from a bunch of people, but they were all at my rank. They were all sergeants. And I didn't think about it till after. And I said, hey, what you calling for? I thought they were going to call and say, hey, congratulations and good job. But overwhelmingly, they're, hey, do they have someone picked out for your job? Are they going to run a fair process? Is that kind of stuff. And I'm embarrassed to tell you, but part of the presentation, it was humbling, hurt a little bit. Walk around kind of feeling like, maybe I didn't help people over the years, but whatever. And I was up near where some of our professional staff worked. And I'm walking around feeling sorry for myself, just a couple days left. And a staff member comes up and she goes, hey, Roman started on the football team this year. I was like, oh, wow. And I'm trying to get out of it. I'm like, oh, whoa, what position? Oh, that's great. Starter. Wow. And she caught on. She's like, you don't know who Roman is. Oh, I said, I don't. I'm so sorry. And she goes, when you guys started this unit, I was in the hospital. He was extremely premature. And there was a time where we didn't know if he was going to be okay. And I was hospitalized for a while. She goes, you guys came up to see me in the hospital all the time. You would bring a coffee for my husband or a magazine for me or whatever the thing was. She goes, to this day, and it was over 20 years later, to this day, I haven't forgotten it. She goes, that meant the world to me. And she has had opportunities to leave and go to other city agencies, but she remembers a time when somebody took the time just to go into the hospital and see her and her, it's her miracle baby. Now, I wouldn't have known him if he didn't, if he walked by me, I would not have known him. But to her, that was a memory that the wellness team cared enough just to check in on her on the most important, scary, vulnerable time of her life. And it kept in her mind over those 20 years. And next slide, please. I got to tell you, I'm embarrassed that I was feeling sorry for myself. And then I heard that story. And then the other story, and I'll make it quick. My wife was leading a team of, at one point, it was up to 98. Others had gotten hired since she had a similar rank and had made substantially more. She had asked her boss, hey, I agreed to the rate of pay, but am I not hitting the mark for you? Because I keep getting told that everyone else is, making more. And he's like, we tried to advocate for you. What could I do? So her current employer found out about this. She tested for a job with them, and the phone call that they made, and everything, I'll sum it up with this story. When they called to offer their job, they said, hey, listen, you did great in the interview. We want to offer you the job. But before you do that, here's what you need to know. We've done our research. We've seen you present in front of council. We think that you're underpaid for your responsibilities. We know that you have a large staff. We want to try and right size that. We're willing to send a team over to move all your office stuff. We've already called the uniform store and got you the professional staff version of our uniform. Would you be willing to come over to our family and make us a better organization and help lead us into our better tomorrows? I tell people, even if it wasn't for a penny more, who in their right mind would not want their spouse to seek an opportunity where they were going to be so valued? So my hope for you, for each and every one of you, is you continue to just take the moments to value the people you work with, the people you lead, the people you work for. I promise they're worth it. We could all talk horror stories all day when we have done it wrong, but the reality is there's a lot of people in need of leadership. Just genuine, how are you? How can we do a better job? And if you're willing to look in the mirror as a wellness coordinator or as an agency leader and make subtle changes, your people will not only stay, but they will bring their friends to work for and they'll solve your recruitment and your retention crisis for you.